All right, guys. So we have some very, very, very intriguing news, right? About the 2020 Olympics. Actually, the 2021 Olympics, because the 2020 Olympics got postponed due to the pandemic. Now, the Olympics Committee has been accused of racism because they banned the phrase Black Lives Matter at the Tokyo Games, right? Now, all the SJWs are up in arms about this because they think that the Olympic Committee is specifically targeting Black Lives Matter by banning that phrase, even though they banned all kinds of protests, because the Olympics historically has been a stage where people like to protest for whatever reason, right? And if you guys understand, like, the world is effed up, okay? And a lot of these countries are doing a lot more effed up things than the United States. So these countries are kind of incentivized not to have their world famous athletes going in front of the world telling people about how effed up it is in their country, right? So, the committee basically decided that, hey, you know what? We're not going to let people do these type of protests on the world stage. And guys, this is international stuff. This is not the United States. Now, if it's in the United States, listen, I believe in free speech. If people want to protest, that's fine. Even though I think in certain situations, like doing it during the anthem, during the NFL game, is really stupid for various reasons. It being disrespectful or people feeling like it's disrespectful, and it's just going to cost you money. It's not worth it. You're not changing anything. You're better off making your money, right? But regardless, right? Like, if people want to do it and be stupid, that's up to them. That's on them. That's their freedom. But that's the United States. That doesn't apply internationally. And people got to understand that. A lot of these countries, you don't get the same freedoms and rights that you do in the United States. Okay? So that also applies at the Olympics. So let's read a little bit more about this. The International Olympic Committee this week reaffirmed a contentious rule that bans athletes from engaging in political speech or silent acts of protest, specifically stating that the phrase Black Lives Matter will be banned at this year's games in Tokyo, Japan. Taking a knee or lifting a fist in support of racial equality during the games would not be allowed, the IOC said. Athletes would also be barred from wearing shirts or other apparel with the phrase Black Lives Matter on them. All right, so this is interesting because a lot of people love to try to talk about, well, you can say the phrase Black Lives Matter without supporting the organization. And I'm like, no, you cannot, right? Because the phrase Black Lives Matter is intrinsically intertwined with the group. It's intertwined with the movement. It's basically all the same thing at this point, guys. It's all the same thing. So the thing is that, yes, everybody agrees that Black Lives Matter, but that phrase, right, from a practical perspective, is now associated with a broader group. That's why it was really stupid for people to run with that phrase in the first place. Because now you've allowed a whole organization and a whole movement to politicize a phrase that most people agree with, but they don't want to say because they think it's associated with some type of larger movement. And that's why I try to tell people about that phrase. It's tainted now, right? It's a tainted phrase, okay? And the Olympic Committee, the international community agrees with me, okay? They agree with me. You can't have it on your shirt because it's associated with a broader social justice movement. It's just not a statement about black people anymore. It's a statement about a larger social movement. It is what it is. Should have picked a better name. Details were scant on how protests or political actions may be punished, but athletes competing in the Olympics can face punishment from one or more of three separate bodies: the IOC itself, the government body of their specific sport, and their home country's Olympic Committee. The decision is based on the IOC's reaffirming Rule 50 of the Games, which restricts any type of demonstration or political, religious, or racial propaganda by athletes at Olympic venues. The aim of Rule 50 is to ensure that each and every athlete can experience the Olympic Games without any divisive disruption, the IOC's website says. The governing authority of the games based on its choice to uphold Rule 50 in part on a survey it sent out to athletes and organizations. IOC Athletes Commission Chief Kirsty Coventry explained, noting that a majority of responses were in favor of keeping the rule in place. So I think the exact number is like 70%. I think 70% of athletes that they surveyed agreed that, hey, we shouldn't be out here protesting in the middle of these games. Okay. And again, I think most athletes, even in the US, probably agree with that. But a lot of people are being forced and peer pressured into doing it because they don't want to hurt somebody's feelings. Okay. And I think a lot of these athletes really just want to focus on the game. They want to, go there, do their jobs, perform, win some medals, and go home. Right? They don't want to come here to be lectured to about the wrong things that have been done in certain countries. Right? That's not what we're here for. Okay. We're here to see the best athletes in the world perform. That's what we're here for. It is what it is. People might not like it, but the athletes agree with it too. Quote, I do not want something to distract from my competition and take away from that. Coventry herself, a former Olympic athlete, added, that's how I still feel today. Despite the survey that the IOC cited for making its decision, several sports organizations spoke out against it. Global Athlete, a progressive athlete startup movement, took note of the survey in April and released a statement at the time decrying the idea that a person's human rights might be determined by a vote. Quote, one cannot survey how people feel about human rights and freedoms of expression, said Global Athlete member Charada O'Donovan, an Irish karate athlete and a world champion kickboxer. These types of surveys only empower the majority when it's the minority that want and need to be heard. Okay, I agree with that, but it doesn't necessarily need to be on the Olympic stage, right? You're there to compete in athletics. You're not there to protest. You can do that in other venues and other places. Okay? And again, listen, here's the thing. They do have that freedom of speech. If they want to do that, that's fine. But I'm just saying, all that stuff does not apply on the international stage. It just doesn't. A lot of these countries, I'm telling you, are incentivized not to have this type of stuff because a lot of these countries, like China, cough, cough, are doing very effed up things that they don't want people going out there and revealing that to the world and putting that information out there on the world stage. It just is what it is. But with that being said, if they want to go on stage and protest China, right, and protest the human rights abuses that's going on in China, including the concentration camps for the Muslims, hey, I'm all for it. I'll support you, right? I'll get behind that. You know what I'm saying? Go ahead and do that. Expose China if you're going to protest, please. Citing the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Global Athlete added in its statement that the Olympic podium is a media of communication to the world and the athlete's frontier cannot be a barrier to human rights. Responding to the IOC's decision, Brandon Schwab, executive director of the World Players Association, said the organization would support athletes who still plan to protest. Quote, any athlete sanctioned at the Tokyo Olympics will have the full backing of the world players, Schwab said. Some on social media accused the IOC of racism for its decision to take direct action against athletes who may have planned to highlight Black Lives Matter at the games. The IOC specifically decided that Olympians can't wear Black Lives Matter attire or protest on the podium is for what reason other than racism, asked Sharad Denti, an English instructor at the University of Alabama, in a tweet. Seriously need an answer as to why that was a necessary focus when the whole Olympics was postponed because of a damn pandemic. Well, the reason why is because the trendy thing to do now is to protest in the name of Black Lives Matter, right? And it is very, very likely that somebody was going to go up there on the world stage and start talking about Black Lives Matter and wear, some type of t-shirt in solidarity with the movement. That's just what was going to happen. And obviously that's against the rules. Again, this is the international stage. Okay. Color of Change, a racial justice organization, also condemned the decision by the IOC. Their policies are a direct assault on free expression of black athletes by a commission that includes no black members, the group added. All right, so yeah, as you can see, the Olympic Committee decided that they're going to ban Black Lives Matter, right? Specifically, the phrase Black Lives Matter won't be on shirts. Now, there's other phrases like equality and justice and all these other things will be allowed, just generic phrases, right? But just the phrase Black Lives Matter won't be. And people are accusing them of being racist because they want to ban Black Lives Matter. But they have to understand, like, the phrase Black Lives Matter is beyond just about black people. Black Lives Matter, capitalized, is a larger movement. It's a larger movement that is focused on social justice and racial discrimination and making the U.S. a Marxist utopia. Things like that. Okay? That's what it's about. And those things have been specifically banned. So wearing a shirt with that movement's name on it is a clear violation of the rules. People just got to understand that it is what it is. But there are groups that saying, listen, if athletes do violate, they will, pay the penalties, or they'll fight back, or they'll do something in order to lessen whatever penalties are imposed on the athletes. So who knows? What will happen? Maybe people will protest at the Olympics. Maybe they won't. I think that it's likely that we'll probably see something, but it might not necessarily be specifically related to Black Lives Matter. But in the meantime, people are up in arms and accusing the Olympic Committee of being racist, right? The whole world is racist against black people in America, right? That's who the whole world is worried about, and that's what they believe. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black considered perspective. Peace.